Have you ever wondered what a music video looked like before music videos were even really a thing? Today, we are diving deep into a forgotten piece of tech that was part movie projector, part jukebox, and just completely revolutionary. So get ready to meet the Scopitone. Yeah, seriously, think about it. We're so used to having our favorite artists right in our pocket, on demand. But rewind the clock a bit. Before MTV, before the internet, how did you get that visual music fix? Well, the answer wasn't at home. It was probably in a smoky bar, huddled around a very, very special kind of box. You know, the idea actually started way back in the 40s with these machines called soundies. You could think of them as kind of proto-music videos. They were these short 3-minute films playing on a loop inside a jukebox. A really cool concept for its time. But the real revolution, that was just around the corner, and it was going to be in glorious Technicolor. And that big leap forward? That was the Scopitone. This is where things get really cool. For the price of a song, you didn't just hear the music, you got to watch it on a 16mm film. This was like having your own personal music video on demand, in an era when that idea was basically science fiction. And here it is. Look at this incredible piece of design. It's part television, part high-fidelity sound system, all wrapped up in this cabinet that just screams mid-century style. You can totally picture people gathering around this thing, just completely mesmerized by the magic happening on that little screen.
So where in the world did this marvel of technology come from? Well, our story starts, maybe a little surprisingly, in France, with the birth of what they called the Technicolor jukebox.
To really get how revolutionary the Scopitone was, you have to look at what came before it. Those old soundy machines were pretty primitive, black and white, only 8 films on a loop, and you couldn't even choose what you wanted to watch. The Scopitone, on the other hand, was a massive jump forward. We're talking brilliant Technicolor, 36 different films to choose from, and high-fidelity sound. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was basically the future showing up in your local bar.
And yeah, this future was born in France. It was patented in 1958 and developed right outside Paris. The Scopitone quickly became this awesome showcase for French pop stars. I mean, we're talking about legends like Serge Gainsbourg and the French Elvis, Johnny Hallyday. You could put a coin in and watch them dancing around a swimming pool. It was new, it was glamorous, and it was just so perfectly French.
But the Scopitone wasn't going to stay in Europe for long. Oh no. It soon made its way across the Atlantic, landing smack dab in the middle of the swinging 60s in America. And this is where it went from being just a cool gadget to a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
But getting a piece of the future on your bar floor, well, it wasn't cheap. By 1966, a single Scopitone machine cost $3,500. Now, to put that in perspective for you, that's over $30,000 in today's money. This was a serious investment, which just goes to show how badly people wanted this new way to experience music.
So what were people paying to see? Okay, this is where it gets really fun. The films had this very specific vibe. You'd call it saucy and wonderfully campy. They were basically pulling from burlesque and the whole go-go dancing craze, and they were definitely aimed at adults in cocktail lounges. They had bombshell performers, wild choreography, and even big names like Nancy Sinatra and Neil Sedaka got in on the action. And at the heart of all that glitz and glamour was this, a physical 16mm film spool. It's such a great reminder that this was all pure analog magic. Every single performance was a real, tangible thing that had to be loaded and played and maintained. There was no streaming, no buffering, just the whir of film.
But just as quickly as it exploded in popularity, the Scopitone's star began to fade. And that brings us to the dramatic third act of our story: scandal, mafia, and decline. So what happened? Why did the music just stop?
Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was really a perfect storm of problems. First off, huge bands like the Beatles decided to use television for their promo films, which could reach millions all at once. Second, musical tastes were changing fast. The campy, go-go style of the Scopitone started to look really dated next to the rise of psychedelic rock. Third, a lot of the films made in the US were, frankly, pretty low quality. But the final nail in the coffin? The business had deep, damaging ties to the Sicilian mafia, and that scandal was something it just couldn't survive.
But the Scopitone story doesn't just end with its downfall. Like any great cultural moment, it left behind a lasting echo. So let's take a look at the afterlife of this incredible machine and see how its influence is actually still around today. So while its peak popularity was over by the early 70s, the machines were still kicking around, playing films by massive acts like the Carpenters and even ABBA. The last official film was made in 1978, but years later the Scopitone started to get this cult following, which led to revival screenings. And then, in 2012, the musician and analog lover Jack White got one for his Third Man record store, totally cementing its place as this object of historical cool.
And this photo right here from 1990 really captures that shift perfectly. The Scopitone is no longer this cutting-edge piece of entertainment. Instead, it's become this beautiful cultural artifact. It's a symbol of an era that's long gone, a time when watching music meant you had to actually go out and put a coin in a slot.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. The Scopitone went from being the absolute future of entertainment to a charming, retro curiosity. It kind of makes you look at the technology in your own life a little differently, doesn't it? What device that you're using right now is destined to become the Scopitone of tomorrow? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this trip back in time.